So cheerful from the Rules Chairman today. So cheerful. The hour of convening has arrived, and the Senate will now come to order. I'd ask that all unauthorized persons exit the chamber. It's my distinguished honor on this beautiful Monday morning to recognize the well-rested, well-dressed Rules Chairman from Chickamauga.
Good morning, Mr. President. Thank you so much. It is a glorious day. And in the North Georgia mountains, there's a small haze in the pasture in front of me, and it's the sun rises and burns that off, and 50 cattle are grazing. It just reminds me of the senator from the 24th when they're doing that, because he is a cattle farmer. And today is the favorite day of the senator from the 7th. It is National Ballet Day. You didn't know that he was a dancer. He looks good in those tights, too. Mr. President, the journal's been read and found to be correct.
I don't know what Senate rule you just broke, but you broke some sort of rule. At least one. The secretary tells me at least one. Yeah. And once again, the Rules Chairman continues to have an engaging presentation each and every morning. Is there objection to dispensing with the reading of the journal? The chair hears none, and the reading of the journal is dispensed with. Is there objection to the confirmation of the journal? The chair hears none, and the journal is confirmed. All senators who have bills and resolutions, please bring them to the Secretary's desk at this time. Mr. Secretary, first reading and reference of Senate bills and resolutions, please.
Senate Bill 455 by Senators Jackson of the 2nd and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Code Section 4286 of the OCGA relating to special license plates promoting or supporting certain worthy agencies, funds, or nonprofit corporations, with proceeds dispersed to the general fund and the agency, fund, or nonprofit corporation, so as to establish a specialty license plate honoring Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated, to provide for related matters, to provide
Public
for compliance.
safety.
Senate Bill 456 by Senators Thompson of the 14th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Title 31 of the OCGA relating to health, so as to provide requirements
Health
relating
and
to
Human Services.
Senate Bill 457 by Senators Burns of the 23rd and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend an act providing for the consolidation of Richmond County and the City of Augusta.
Slow go.
Senate Bill 458 by Senators Burns of the 23rd and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend an act regulating public instruction for the County of Richmond, approved August 23rd, 1872, as amended particularly by an act.
Slow go.
Senate Bill 459 by Senators Orrick of the 36th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Title 20 of the OCGA relating to education, so as to provide for the establishment of unified campus police
Public
forces.
safety.
Senate Bill 460 by Senators Orrick of the 36th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Title 20 of the OCGA relating to education, so as to provide that non-citizen students who have received a grant or deferred
Higher
action.
education.
Senate Bill 461 by Senators Dixon of the 45th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Code Section 1761 of the OCGA relating to when offenses bailable.
Public
procedure.
safety.
Senate Bill 462 by Senator Summers of the 13th, a bill to be entitled an act to amend an act reconstituting the Board of Education of Lee County, approved April 9th, 1993, as
Slow
amended.
go.
That completes the order, Mr. President.
First reading and reference of House bills and resolutions, please.
House Bill 752 by Representatives Cooper of the 43rd and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Title 37 of the OCGA relating to mental health, so as to provide for a psychiatric advance directive.
Judiciary.
House Bill 867 by Representatives Newton of the 123rd and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 64 of Title 33 of the OCGA relating to regulation and licensure.
Insurance and labor.
House Bill 873 by Representatives Rich of the 97th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend an act creating the Board of Commissioners of Gwinnett County, approved January 31st, 1968, as amended particularly by an act approved April 1st, 1994.
State and local government.
House Bill 1060 by Representative Mathis of the 144th, a bill to be entitled an act to authorize the governing authority of the City of Cochrane to levy an excise tax pursuant to subsection B of
Slow
Code.
go.
House Bill 1061 by Representative Yurda of the 152nd, a bill to be entitled an act to amend an act creating the Board of Commissioners of Lee County, approved August 6, 1921 as amended.
Slow go.
House Bill 1063 by Representatives Meeks of the 178th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend an act creating the Board of Commissioners.
Slow go.
House Bill 1066 by Representative Green of the 151st, a bill to be entitled an act to amend an act creating the Board of Commissioners of Stewart County, approved April 4th, 1996 as amended.
Slow go.
House Bill 1067 by Representative Green of the 151st, a bill to be entitled an act to amend an act relating to the Board of Education of Stewart County and approving for the
Slow go.
House Bill 1070 by Representatives Holmes of the 129th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend an act creating the Jones County Board of Education, approved.
Slow go.
House Bill 1071 by Representatives Holmes of the 129th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend an act creating the Board of Commissioners of Jones County.
Slow go.
House Bill 1072 by Representative Deloach of the 167th, a bill to be entitled an act to amend an act creating the Board of Commissioners of McIntosh County, approved February
Slow go.
26th. House Bill 1073 by Representative Stevens of the 164th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend an act providing for the election of members of the Board of Commissioners of Bryan
Slow
County.
go.
House Bill 1074 by Representative Stevens of the 164th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend an act providing for the election of the members of the Board of Education of Bryan County.
Slow go.
House Bill 1075 by Representative Parrish of the 158th, a bill to be entitled an act to amend an act establishing the Board of Commissioners of
Slow go.
Roads. House Bill 1076 by Representative Taylor of the 173rd, a bill to be entitled an act to amend an act creating a Board of Commissioners for the County of Grady, approved
Slow
December.
go.
House Bill 1077 by Representatives Taylor of the 173rd and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend an act providing for the Board of Education of Thomas County, approved March 30th, 1989 as amended.
Slow go.
House Bill 1078 by Representatives Golett of the 19th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend an act creating the Board of Commissioners of Paulding County, approved April 17, 1975 as amended, particularly.
Slow go.
House Bill 1079 by Representative Dickey of the 140th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend an act to provide for the Board of Education of Peach County, approved March 20th,
Slow go.
1990. House Bill 1080 by Representatives Dickey of the 140th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend an act to create a Board of Commissioners of Roads and Revenues for Peach County, approved.
Slow go.
House Bill 1081 by Representative Parrish of the 158th, a bill to be entitled an act to amend an act creating a new Board of Education for Jenkins County, approved.
Slow go.
House Bill 1082 by Representatives Rhodes of the 120th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend an act recreating the Board of Commissioners of Wilkes County, approved April 17th.
Slow go.
That completes the order, Mr. President.
Mr. Secretary, can you please read reports of standing committees, please?
Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Agriculture and Consumer Affairs has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Bill 396 do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Walker of the 20th District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Public Safety has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Bill 404 do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator John Albers of the 56th District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on State and Local Government Operations has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. House Bill 985 do pass. House Bill 986 do pass. House Bill 988 do pass. House Bill 989 do pass. House Bill 990 do pass. House Bill 1006 do pass. House Bill 1007 do pass. House Bill 1018 do pass. House Bill 1019 do pass. House Bill 1036 do pass. Senate Bill 409 do pass. Senate Bill 410 do pass. Senate Bill 414 do pass. Senate Bill 415 do pass. Senate Bill 416 do pass. Senate Bill 417 do pass. Senate Bill 418 do pass. Senate Bill 423 do pass. Senate Bill 424 do pass. Senate Bill 425 do pass. Senate Bill 426 do pass. Senate Bill 427 do pass. Senate Bill 428 do pass. Senate Bill 429 do pass. Senate Bill 422 do pass. Senate Bill 446 do pass. Senate Bill 447 do pass. House Bill 981 do pass. House Bill 982 do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Anderson of the 24th District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on State and Local Government Operations has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Bill 406 do pass. Senate Bill 407 do pass. Senate Bill 411 do pass. Senate Bill 412 do pass. Senate Bill 413 do pass. Senate Bill 432 do pass. Senate Bill 433 do pass. Senate Bill 434 do pass. And House Bill 987 do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Anderson of the 24th District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on State and Local Government Operations General has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. House Bill 841 do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Anderson of the 24th District Chairman. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Mr. Secretary, can you please read bills and resolutions for the second time?
Senate Bill 84 by Senator Albers of the 56 and others. Peace Officers Annuity of and Benefit Fund. Certain communications officers shall be eligible for membership in such fund provide. Senate Bill 281 by Senator Robertson of the 29th and others. Sheriff's Retirement Fund of Georgia. Increase in dues provide. Senate Bill 343 by Senator Huff-Stetler and the 52nd and others. Retirement, prohibition of granting post-retirement benefit adjustments to any individual who became a member on or after July 1st, 2009, remove. Senate Bill 361 by Senator Walker III of the 20th and others. Law Enforcement Strategic Support Act, or Less Crime Act, enact. Senate Bill 370 by Senator Kauser of the 46th and others. Fostering Success Act, enact. Local second readers, Senate Bill 406 by Senator Hickman of the 4th, Board of Education of Effingham County, description of the education districts change. Senate Bill 407 by Senator Hickman of the 4th and others. Board of Commissioner of Effingham County, description of the commissioner districts change. Senate Bill 409 by Senator Payne of the 54th, Whitfield County Board of Education, description of the education districts change. Senate Bill 410 by Senator Payne of the 54th and others, Board of Education of Gordon County, description of the education districts change. Senate Bill 411 by Senator Anna Vitarte of the 31st, Board of Education of Haralson County, description of the education districts change. Senate Bill 412 by Senator Anna Vitarte of the 31st, Polk County districts for the election of members of the Board of Commissioners revise. Senate Bill 413 by Senator Anna Vitarte of the 31st, Board of Education of Polk County, new district boundaries provide. Senate Bill 414 by Senator Tillery of the 19th, Board of Commissioners of Long County, description of the commissioner districts change. Senate Bill 415 by Senator Tillery of the 19th, Board of Education of Long County, description of the education districts change. Senate Bill 416 by Senator Tillery of the 19th, Board of Commissioners of Telfair County, districts for the election of members of the Board of Commissioners, revise. Senate Bill 417 by Senator Harper of the 7th, Board of Education of Berrien County, description of the districts from which members of such board are elected, change. Senate Bill 418 by Senator Harper of the 7th, Board of Commissioners of Roads and Revenues of Berrien County, new commissioner districts provide. Senate Bill 422 by Senator Goodman of the 8th, Governing Authority of Lowndes County, description of the commissioner districts change. Senate Bill 423 by Senator Goodman of the 8th, Board of Education of Lowndes County, description of the educational districts change. Senate Bill 424 by Senator Goodman of the 8th, Board of Commissioners of Brooks County, description of the commissioner districts change. Senate Bill 425 by Senator Goodman of the 8th, Board of Education of Lanier County, education districts for the election of members of the Board of Education, revise. Senate Bill 426 by Senator Goodman of the 8th, Board of Commissioners of Lanier County, districts for the election of the members of the Board of Commissioners, revise. Senate Bill 427 by Senator Goodman of the 8th, Board of Education for Clinch County, description of education districts change. Senate Bill 428 by Senator Goodman of the 8th, Board of Commissioners for Clinch County, description of the commissioner districts change. Senate Bill 429 by Senator Goodman of the 8th, Board of Education of Brooks County, description of the education districts change. Senate Bill 432 by Senator Burns of the 23rd, Board of Commissioners for Screven County, election of members to revise the districts of the education, election of members provide. Senate Bill 433 by Senator Burns of the 23rd, Board of Education of Screven County, districts for the election of members of the Board of Education revise. Senate Bill 434 by Senator Burns of the 23rd, Board of Commissioners of Warren County, description of the commissioner districts change. Senate Bill 446 by Senator Burns of the 23rd. Board of Education of Warren County, description of the education districts, change. Senate Bill 447 by Senator Burns of the 23rd. Board of Commissioners of Glasscock County, add 2 members to the board. House Bill 981 by Representative Anderson of the 10th and others. Cornelia, City of Redevelopment Powers Law, provide for referendum. House Bill 982 by Representative Green of the 151st. Calhoun County, Board of Education, provide new district boundaries. House Bill 985 by Representative Williams of the 168th and others. Liberty County, Board of Commissioners, change description of districts. House Bill 986 by Representative Collins of the 68th and others. Carroll County, Board of Education, change description of districts. House Bill 987 by Representative Buckner of the 137th and others. Meriwether County, Board of Education, revised per diem allowance of members. House Bill 988 by Representative Gullett of the 19th and others. Paulding County, ad valorem tax, provide homestead exemption. House Bill 989 by Representative Smith of the 18th and others. Haralson County, Board of Education, provide for compensation. House Bill 990 by Representative Williams of the 145th. Baldwin County, Board of Commissioners, reconstitute and change description of districts. House Bill 1006 by Representative Dickey of the 140th. Crawford County, Board of Education, reconstitute and change description of districts. House Bill 1007 by Representative Dickey of the 140th. Crawford County, Board of Commissioners, revised member districts. House Bill 1018 by Representative Parrish of the 158th. Emmanuel County, Board of Commissioners, change description of districts. House Bill 1019 by Representative Parrish of the 158th. Swainsboro, City of Corporate Limits, change provisions. House Bill 1036 by Representative Leverett of the 33rd. Lincoln County, Board of Education, provide compensation of members. That completes the order, Mr. President.
For what purposes the senator from the 10th rise?
Mr. President, I request permission to waive the rules to have the first reading of 4 local bills, redistricting bills.
Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption of all 4 bills?
Senate Bill number 463 by Senator Jones of the 10th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend an act providing for the election of the members of the Board of Education of Henry County and for other purposes. Senate Bill 464 by Senator Jones of the 10th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend an act providing for the new Board of Commissioners of Henry County and for other purposes. Senate Bill 465 by Senator Jones of the 10th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend an act establishing the form of government of DeKalb County and for other purposes. Senate Bill number 466 by Senator Jones of the 10th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend an act establishing DeKalb County and for other purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Senator from the 10th has asked for unanimous consent that 4 local bills be read and assigned to committee. Is there objection? The chair hears none, and all 4 are assigned to SLOGO. It's now time for our morning roll call. It is now time for our morning roll call. Are there any motions to excuse? Chair recognizes the majority whip.
Good morning, Mr. President. I'd like to ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senators from the 3rd and the 21st and the 14th.
Without objection, the senators from the 3rd, 21st, and 14th are excused. Are there any additional motions to excuse? Senator from the 33rd. Chair recognizes the senator from the 33rd.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning.
Good morning, thank you. Appreciate that time. Chair recognizes the majority leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent to excuse the senator from Rome.
Without objection, the senator from Rome is excused. Any additional motions to excuse? The secretary will call the roll of senators. Signify your presence by voting the yea switch. The secretary will unlock the machine. All right, it's now time for our morning devotional. Would ask that all senators please take your seats and cease all audible conversations. Ask our awesome doorkeepers to secure the chamber at this time. Chair would like to recognize the senator from the 7th to lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance and to introduce to us our chaplain of the day.
Good morning. Join me as we honor our country. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And to the Georgia flag. I pledge allegiance to the Georgia flag and the principles for which it stands, wisdom, justice, and moderation. Well, good morning. It is a pleasure to be here this morning, and always a pleasure to introduce a pastor from my home back in South Georgia, but more importantly, my pastor of my home church this morning. Brother Kenny Sexton is with us, and it's glad to have him with us this morning. And Kenny graduated from Valdosta State University with a degree in music education. After attending Valdosta State, he became the band director of my alma mater at Irwin County High School, and he was there for 2 years before leaving to attend the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary in Louisville, Kentucky, where he received a master's degree in church music. I don't know exactly what a master's degree in church music is, but I'm sure the senator from the 53rd can show us later on and give us a good explanation of what that might be. I'll say this, apparently while he was in Kentucky, he must have got swayed from his ways when it comes to the SEC and become a Kentucky fan. So I'm working on him a little bit because especially since our Bulldogs won the national title, I'm trying to get him converted to another SEC championship team. But anyway, he proceeded using his talents upon graduating from seminary by serving in churches in Kentucky, Alabama, and Arkansas, of all places, and which, Brother Kenny, I'll be honest with you, before I read this, I didn't know that you had served in so many places, and honestly, I didn't know that pastors and Elizabeth Taylor could have so much in common. You know, you changed states and churches about as much as she changed husbands. So he, like I said earlier, he currently serves as our pastor at our home church at Satilla Baptist Church in Ray, Georgia. He's been there for 2 years. He started right before COVID. He's done a phenomenal job of leading our church through the COVID pandemic, as well as leading and pastoring our church and shepherding our church. I've enjoyed serving alongside of him and serving our church. He's married to definitely his better half, Gina, who's with us this morning. They have 3 kids, Jana, Jenny, and Landon. And they are all married, and they have blessed them with 5 grandkids. And Jana and her husband, Chris, are with us this morning as well. We're glad to have them. So with that, I'm going to turn the podium over to Brother Kenny Sexton. Please give him his attention as he brings us our devotional this morning.
Appreciate it. Well, Tyler, at least I stayed in SEC country, okay? I stayed in SEC country. Well, in 1949, Leo Robin wrote a jazz song titled, "Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend." A kiss may be grand, and here's some lyrics, but it won't pay the rental on your humble flat or help you at the automat. Men grow cold as girls grow old, and we will all lose our charms in the end. But square cut or pear-shaped, these rocks don't lose their shape. Diamonds are a girl's best friend. And don't you love it? Square cut or pear-shaped, these rocks don't lose their shape. Diamonds are a girl's best friend. We lose our shape. We grow old. We don't look as valuable, but these rocks don't lose their shape or their value. And I was reminded of a couple that was in their 80s, and they were laying in bed one night, and the wife looked at her husband and said, "You know, when we were younger, you used to hold my hand." And so he slid his hand over there and held her hand, and a few minutes later she said, "Well, honey, you know, when we were younger, you used to cuddle with me." And so he kind of worked his way over there and cuddled with her, and so then a few minutes went by, and he said, "You know, honey, you used to nibble on my ear." Well, next thing you know, the covers go back. He gets out of the bed. He's headed toward the bathroom. She said, "Honey, what did I say? What did I say that upset you so bad?" He says, "Hang on, I'm getting my teeth." We may not look as good as we age, but we can still have fun. When you look into the 4 C's of a diamond, you'll find cut, clarity, color, and carat. The carat has an effect on price. Why? Because the carat is determined by weight. So I looked up the definition of weight, and it gave the following: to attach worth or value to something. The carat gives the diamond value and worth. Carl Jones wrote in Diamonds, he said, a popular advertisement has it that a diamond is forever, and against the backdrop of a woman lovingly embracing a man. Diamonds have always been associated with love as much as they are associated with wealth. Give a woman a ring, and it proves that you really do love her. Carl gives 4 reasons for giving diamonds. 1, to symbolize love. Number 2, they are romantic. Number 3, they last forever. And number 4, they hold memories. I think I agree with Carl. But in the Gospel of Matthew, in chapter 6, we find a part of the greatest sermon that Jesus preached called the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus had been teaching on kingdom living. I can imagine the crowds of the people clinging to every word of this new teaching. His teaching was different. As we look at Matthew 6, verses 19 to 21, he says this: don't store up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves don't break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Jesus was given a teaching about storing up things in this life that will be destroyed, things in this life that will pass away. Jesus tells us in verse 19, don't store up for yourselves treasures on earth. Jesus was sharing with the disciples and those who were sitting on the hillside what really matters. The word used for store up can be to hoard. Now, if you're like me, I don't want to associate my life with about being a hoarder, and we know what that looks like. I've seen the show, and to be honest with you, that show's hard to watch. But however, the word in this text means to keep safe that which is of great value. We need to hoard the right things mentioned in verse 20. But store up for yourself treasures in heaven where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves cannot break in and steal. What do we need to store up, or what do we need to hoard in this life? How about love? How about joy? How about peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control? Those are great qualities for us to store up because they're called the fruit of the Spirit. As I mentioned, the carat earlier, it gives the value or worth to the diamond, and treasures in heaven have value. They have eternal value. So let us store up love for God and love for people. Let us pass along to our kids and grandkids and great-grandkids things of eternal value. The gospel of Jesus Christ, making disciples who make disciples. Jesus closes verse 21 in that you will find your heart in what you value most. In 2020, my mother and my mother-in-law both passed away 3 months apart. Even though we dearly miss them and their legacy does live on, they left behind memories in jewelry and diamonds. I've witnessed joy and tears in my daughter's eyes when they were given jewelry from their grandmothers. They realized the love, the value, and the memories each piece carry. But more than jewelry or the diamonds, they left behind something even greater, something with more value. They both lived lives where they stored up treasures in heaven. They gave us love, their love for God and love for people. They loved people and they loved their family. They gave us the gospel, the good news of Jesus and how to follow him. They gave us eternal diamonds because they gave us the diamond of their heart. Because when we searched their heart, we found their treasure. The things that mattered most in this life to them was Jesus and family and others. They gave us memories of them, and the best memory was that they had a personal relationship with Christ, and that one day in eternity we'll get to see them again. The carat of the diamond weight is valuable because it has attached itself to something of value or worth. I want to leave you with 2 questions today. What do you value? Number 2, what will be your legacy? Be reminded of this statement. When your life is over, people will see what you treasure most. Father, in this room, there's leaders with people, their families in this state. I pray for wisdom and guidance today as they meet. In your name I pray. Amen.
No, you.
Senate will come back to order. Are there any unanimous consents? The chair sees none. Does any senator wish to rise on a point of personal privilege? Chair recognizes the senator from the 16th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. Are we on? As we deal with Black History Month, I want you to listen to this. We talk a lot about history after the Civil War, but we don't talk about what went on prior to the Civil War. And there were some great black leaders who helped us. And I want to read you the story of James Armistead, if you've not heard it. James Armistead was one of the most important American spies during the Revolution. As a slave in Virginia, he witnessed much of the war and following the British siege of Richmond, he asked his master, William Armistead, for permission to serve in the cause of American independence with General Marquis Lafayette, a young Frenchman who came to fight with the Americans. His master agreed, and Lafayette accepted his service. Lafayette dispatched Armistead to the camp of a patriot turncoat named Benedict Arnold. This is part of the Benedict Arnold that we know of. Then the British general proposed that he was an escaped slave looking for work. Arnold accepted Armistead and allowed him to work in the camp, thus placing him around the other British generals, including British Commander-in-Chief Lord Cornwallis. Armistead obtained much of the vital information about British troops and troop movement, which he daily sent to General Lafayette. Ironically, Lord Cornwallis so trusted Armistead that he asked him to become a British spy to watch the Americans. Armistead agreed and thus became a double spy, feeding accurate information to the Americans and inaccurate information to the British. Upon learning that the British fleet was moving Cornwallis and his troops to Yorktown, Armistead quickly relayed that information to Lafayette and Washington, who gathered the American forces at Yorktown. After the British troops had landed and the British fleet had unsuspectingly departed from the Chesapeake Bay, the Americans engaged the British while the French fleet blocked the bay to keep the British Navy from returning. The Battle of Yorktown ensued, and the British, without their Navy to provide them reinforcements or supply, and with no way to retreat off the peninsula on which they were trapped, they finally surrendered. Armistead's crucial information had helped bring a victorious ending to the American Revolution. Following the war, Armistead returned to slavery on his master's plantation. 3 years later, in 1784, General Lafayette returned to America for a visit and met his friend Armistead. Lafayette penned a certificate to Virginia leaders praising the work and the important contribution that Armistead then petitioned the legislature for his freedom, which was granted on New Year's Day of 1787. In his later years, Armistead also received a retirement pension from the state for his military service. Following his emancipation, Armistead adopted the name Lafayette and therefore called himself James Lafayette. He remained in the state as a farmer. General Lafayette came to hate slavery both in America and Europe, and it is believed that it was his association with James Armistead that helped clarify his views on slavery, leading to him to begin a strong public crusade against that evil. In 1824, General Lafayette made his final visit to America. His tour across the nations was greeted with crowds and thousands of people in various cities. And when touring Richmond, the general recognized in the crowd his black comrade from 4 decades earlier, now an old man, and called him out by name and embraced him, the last time the two patriot friends were to meet. James Armistead, a hero of the American Revolution. Thank you, sir.
Chair recognizes the minority leader for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. I rise today to talk about something good. We talk a lot in this body about divisions. There are a lot of policy issues that we don't agree on. But there is one issue that we should be able to speak about in one voice, and that is health care. We are all in this health care boat together. The pandemic has been a real-world lesson in the ways that when anyone in Georgia can't get access to a vaccine or a timely test, or even just good advice from a doctor, we are all impacted. We have an opportunity to do the right thing today and act together as a body to make a huge difference. Extending Medicaid coverage to new mothers to a full year after birth is a solid step towards improving the lives and health of mothers and babies in Georgia. It will address our shameful maternal mortality rate. We cannot claim to care about women's health, maternal health, and babies without passing this legislation. By extending Medicaid access to new mothers in a full year with Senate Bill 338, we will be taking a major stride towards reducing our maternity mortality rate in Georgia. It provides an umbrella of protection for mothers and babies at an extremely vulnerable time, and it is a proven solution that can be immediately implemented to improve outcomes. If we pass this legislation to extend Medicaid coverage for new mothers, then we need to look closely at the other things we can do to help people who are struggling with health care. This expansion is crucial, but it's not enough. It will not reopen rural hospitals or make a woman's drive to see her doctor any shorter. And just last week, I had the opportunity to witness a person that was affected by maternal mortality. She suffered with something called cardiomyopathy. And I do know a little about that because my mother had it, and she actually passed away with cardiomyopathy. This young lady carries around 2 little boxes. They actually look like videotapes. And they help her heart. They pumped her heart for her. And if she didn't have that, she would not be alive today. And she's had those for 10 years. Her child is 19 years old, and she has one that's 27. So we can see clearly what a good thing we would be doing today if we would vote for this bill. Senate Bill 338 demonstrates that we know Medicaid works. We are acknowledging it helps people, but we need to stop nibbling around the corners of this problem. A report was published in January that ranked Georgia as one of the worst places in the country to raise a family. We don't want that. We want to be better than that. One of the biggest reasons that was given was poor access to health care. We can do this today, and then we can keep going and do more. We can expand Medicaid. We can improve family leave policies. We can strengthen our child care infrastructure. All of this would show that we are serious about helping families in Georgia. Senate Bill 338 will save lives. We can keep going and save 1,000 more lives. Thank you, Mr. President. I leave the well with the intent to vote for Senate Bill 338.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 54th for a point of personal privilege. Thank you, Mr. President. Friends, we have an honor today. We have guests with us today that I'd like to bring honor to for pretty significant accomplishment. In 2021, the NAIA National Championship
under Coach Ben Rickett and Athletic Director John Jowden, the young men of Dalton State's golf team brought home the national championship to Dalton, Georgia, and we are very proud of them. They've won 6 straight Southern State Athletic Conference championships, 2 individual national champions, 4 Jack Nicklaus Award recipients, 3 top 5 national team finishes, 5 National Player of the Year, 6 Conference Players of the Year, and of course, the 2021 NAIA Coach of the Year, Coach Ben Rickett. And it's my honor, we have them here in the well today. If y'all would please stand up and let us recognize you. Let the state of Georgia know that in the year of champions in Georgia, when the Atlanta Braves bring home a world championship and Georgia brings home the national championship, well, Dalton State did their part too. Thank you guys, and we're proud to have you here.
All right, we're going to take a quick time out from our points of personal privilege and recognize some extremely special guests that we have with us in the chamber. And if I could have everyone's attention, and we stay in our seats. Mr. Secretary, can you please read the resolution?
Senate Resolution 445 by Senators Miller and all other senators. A resolution honoring the life and memory of Miller, Peterson, Pete Robinson, and for other purposes. Whereas the state of Georgia mourns the loss of one of its most distinguished citizens with the loss of Miller, Peterson, Pete Robinson on July 1st, 2021. And whereas Mr. Robinson was born on December 4th, 1954 in Columbus, Georgia, to Gene Peterson Robinson and Ezekiel Miller Robinson. And whereas a graduate of Hardaway High School, Emory University, Mercer University School of Law, he started his legal career in Valdosta in 1980 before returning to Columbus in 1982. Whereas Robinson started a long and successful career serving the people of Columbus in the House of Representatives in 1985 and later in the Senate. Whereas during his time in the General Assembly, he served in several leadership roles, including Governor Zell Miller's floor leader, Senate Majority Leader, and President Pro Tem, first to be nominated and seconded by both the majority and majority leaders. Whereas when he left public office in 1994, he maintained the role of counselor and confidant to legislators, speakers of the House, lieutenant governors, having served as co-chair of Governor Nathan Deal's Judicial Nominating Committee. Now therefore be it resolved by the Senate that the members of this body join in honoring the life and memory of Miller, Peterson, Pete Robinson, and express their deepest and most sincere regret at his passing. That completes the order.
Is there objection to adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. I'd like to invite the President Pro Tem to speak to the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. There are very few individuals in the state of Georgia that will have the impact on as many lives as the late Pete Robinson. Pete Robinson was a friend to anyone and everyone he met. He was a mentor to many. He was a counselor to many, a confidant to many, and a guide to many of the individuals currently serving in this body and who have previously served in this body. Pete Robinson was a man of impeccable integrity. Pete Robinson was a man of keen intellect. Pete Robinson planted orchards from which we will all reap the fruit. He planted trees under which we will all enjoy the shade, as will generations of other Georgians. in addition to being a guide and a mentor, he was also just a fun guy. You know, he always joked, he sounded like a law firm, Peterson, Miller, Robinson. Miller, Peterson, Robinson. he said he sounded like a law firm. He knew he had to practice law right out of the chute. But I will always be grateful for his influence on me personally. And as many of you have heard me say, when you do something for me, I am grateful. When you do something for my wife or my children, you earn a place in my heart. Pete Robinson had a place in my heart. And I know before we leave this subject this morning, this very solemn subject this morning, I know that we will recognize the Robinson family in the gallery, and I will let the governor call on that at the appropriate time. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Chair would like to recognize the senator from the 29th to speak on behalf of the resolution.
Four years ago, when I decided to was considering running for the Georgia State Senate, had a list of people I had to speak with first. At the top of the list was Pete Robinson. I called Pete. We had developed a good relationship because of Pete's grandfather being the chief jailer of Harris County long before I was born. And because of my law enforcement experience, Pete and I became quick friends the first time we met. And I knew what his resume was, and I knew what his bio read. So I knew for me to be successful, I would have to have the blessing of Pete Robinson. Pete and I met in Pine Mountain at Rose Cottage. I ordered my regular drink of black coffee, and Pete ordered a Mexican Coke. For some reason, Pete said the sugar in Mexican Coke was better than the sugar in American Coke. And with Pete's sense of humor, I didn't know if he was serious or not, but they brought him a green labeled Coca-Cola, and he drank it, and we talked. And Pete warned me of all the pitfalls, told me the perils that come with campaigning, the lack of privacy, and some of the ugly parts. And then at the end, he said, "Randy, I think you'll be perfect." And I took that to heart. I was walking through the Capitol a year ago with a member of this body who I respect a lot, and we were looking at the pictures in this building, and I asked him, I said, "Do you know any of these people?" And he said, "No, I don't." And I said, "Neither do I." I said, there are two types of people that serve in this building. There are those who their goal is to have their picture hanging on a wall inside this building so that people will speak their name and know who they are for a long, long time. And then there are those who work in this building and they do not care that 100 years from now, nobody will know their name. Nobody may ever remember anything about them, but that they will benefit. The citizens of Georgia will benefit from the things they do in this chamber. And Pete Robinson's one of those guys. There's a medical school in Columbus, Georgia today because of Pete Robinson. There's a lot of great things throughout my district because of Pete Robinson. And Pete Robinson never cared if he was ever recognized for it or not, because Pete did it for the right reason. And the world today is not as good as it should be because Pete's not here. But I will tell you this. I know he's up in heaven looking down, and I know if I get sideways, he'll use the spicy language he used when he spoke to me, and he said he could speak to me that way because he was my constituent. But my life is so much better because of my friendship with Pete Robinson, and I want to thank his children for sharing your dad with us, for sharing your dad with me, because I don't tell you what, I don't like a lot of people, but I loved your dad. And thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the Dean of the Senate to speak to the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. I didn't expect to say anything today, but I'm really honored, and I thought about Pete when I attended his homegoing, and I remember when I was elected in 1992, I never came to the Capitol before I was sworn in. I never spoke to anyone in the chamber. Other than Pete Robinson. So when I got here, the day of the swearing in and things like that, I found that I had been appointed chair of the Veterans Committee. And I couldn't figure that out. I thought that was quite normal until a lot of people told me, said, look, you're a chairman now, you got to act like a chairman, and the person to train you correctly is Pete Robinson. As a matter of fact, if it wasn't for Pete, you wouldn't be chairman. So I was just very stunned by that and honored to have that particular status. Pete had a great sense of statesmanship. He worked across the aisles. We enjoyed each other. He and Tom Buck would invite me to dinner with them and lunch with them all the time, but I didn't feel worthy to be in that such lofty company as they, and I very rarely attend. A lot of people wanted to, but I didn't attend, but they always brought me into the circle, and I was taught by them about how to act. I really thought they did a good job. The one thing about Pete, when I came up here, he had his younger child was a little redhead, so I know when she came, she was a baby. Now she's up here, I'm pretty sure, about under 20 years old, 27 years old, something like that. But I certainly enjoyed that. And one thing about Pete, I'll tell you this, if Pete ever told you these words, this is big. This is big. If he told you that, it was big and you could watch out. But anyway, Pete Robinson, resting in heaven, I'm a better man because of it, because everything I learned from Pete Robinson. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I yield the well.
Thank all three of you for those great words. In my nearly 10 years of being in this building and around this process, I think there's very few people that are as respected as Pete Robinson has been throughout this process. And so it's been a great honor to work alongside him. I want to take a moment to recognize his family who's with us here. If we could all rise and thank them for being here. Thank you so much for sharing Pete with us. And we are all better because of Pete Robinson. Chair recognizes the senator from the 4th for a point of personal privilege.
Wow, that was wonderful. Thank y'all. Mr. President, Senators, we have many times in this chamber recognized accomplishments of champion baseball teams, football teams, soccer teams, basketball teams, so forth and so on. Very seldom have I been in this Senate chamber that we recognize academic championships. I will now recognize one. In fact, it involves someone very close to Joanne and myself, our daughter in love, Rebecca Hickman, who is married to our son, Rhett. Last week, Metter High School senior Dylan Lee was named Star Student 2022 of Metter High School, and our daughter-in-love, Rebecca, was named Star Teacher. Rebecca teaches middle school science, 6th and 7th grade, 6th grade now. In fact, Dylan said that science was not her favorite class. It was math. As to why she chose Rebecca as her star teacher, Dylan replied, "I chose Ms. Hickman because she encourages and inspires her students to be the best version of themselves, and her impact goes far beyond the classroom. Personally, I saw a lot of myself in her, especially in her love for reading." Rebecca's star teacher has been a teacher for over 12 years at Metter Middle School, as I stated, teaching 6th and 7th grade. Rebecca said, "I wasn't a huge fan of school growing up. When I was a senior, there was a teacher that made a huge impact on me. I enjoyed her and her class. It led me to wonder what my school years would have been like if I had experienced more teachers or classes like that throughout my education. I decided to become a teacher in hopes I could help kids enjoy coming to school rather than hating it. If I could help just one student not hate school or look forward to it, then it would be all worth it. Being driven to make school a more exciting place to be, Rebecca took inspiration from her own school experiences into her teaching career. She says her favorite part of teaching is the bonds that she makes with the students along the way. Rebecca said, my favorite part of teaching is hands down the relationships I get to form with numerous students. It's such an amazing honor to get, listen to this, it's such an amazing honor to teach and love so many different amazing individuals. Her superintendent, Brother Longyear from Metter, says the fact that Dylan chose Rebecca as her star teacher after having been in her class since the 6th grade speaks volumes to the impact Rebecca Hickman is having on students. Her passion for teaching and love for students is an asset to Canoga County Schools and Drive State. Growing up in Statesboro and graduating from Georgia Southern University, Rebecca still lives there with her husband, Rhett, and 2 sons, Liam and Landon. Thank you, Rebecca, for making a difference in the classroom. Thank you, Canoga County Board of Education, for your vision and leadership. Mr. President, I yield the will.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 9th for a point of personal privilege.
Good morning, members. I rise today to speak out and condemn the actions of Republicans in our Gwinnett County delegation when it comes to legislation that matters in impacting our county as a whole, our Board of Commission, our Board of Education. Gwinnett County, as all of you know, is the most diverse county in Georgia, I think in the U.S. And voters have elected one of the most diverse groups of local leaders to represent them at all levels of government in Gwinnett, including our Board of Commissioners and our Board of Education. Despite significant political changes taking place in our county over the last few years, Gwinnett's new leadership has continued to make Gwinnett a great place to work, live, and raise a family, while pursuing a number of new policies that take as a whole things that improve our county. I know these local leaders. I know they work hard to listen to stakeholders, I know I do, and residents on all sides of our political spectrum. And we try to do what's best for our county. Instead of choosing to work with these newly elected Democratic leaders for the good of all the county, including their own constituents, Republicans on the Gwinnett delegation have chosen to pursue a divisive path, disregarding and disrespecting the rules and the will of the Gwinnett delegation as a whole and the process that the Board of Commissioners and the Board of Education put in place to take input from, to produce and submit legally compliant redistricting maps for redistricting purposes. Throughout the weeks and months when we were gathering information on these maps, there was opportunity for public comments and amendments and input when it came to the Gwinnett redistricting process. Republicans chose not to engage then or offer any substantive input and are rather now disrupting our efforts to follow the process and pass these local maps for the Board of Education, which that one wasn't the issue, but the Board of Commissioners is the one that will come to this chamber that is an issue. And they are threatening to make these changes. The bill will be HB 873. It was introduced on the House side. It was not vetted by the public. We went through a process for HB 873. We went through our local delegation. We introduced a map that our public in Gwinnett had input on and agreed upon. Our Board of Commissioners held several town meetings to get that input. Once those maps for the Board of Commissioners was introduced here, the House side, House Republicans, decided to hijack that map in a backroom deal that weighted in favor of Republicans. And it weakens the power of voters of color in Gwinnett. They continue to pursue making these changes that would basically none of our electorate is asking for. The map was fair. The map was vetted. The map was passed by it went through our reapportionment office. Gwinnett Republicans need to withdraw these proposals. Withdraw the proposal for HB 873. We have a map that the people wanted. We are at a critical time where we are disrupting regular order and regular process. We're rejecting the norms that have normally happened with our local delegations in favor of partisanship and not listening to the people. And this is a dangerous precedent we're going to set for our democracy if this is the path we're going to continue to go on. So I ask Gwinnett Republicans to withdraw the map, HB 873, and work and listen to Gwinnett voters and work on behalf of the people. We need to respect local control and pass fair and transparent maps that were submitted by the voters. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 27th for a point of personal privilege.
Good morning, almost good afternoon, colleagues, and happy February 7th, 2022, also known as 689 days since 15 days to flatten the curve. In the early days of the COVID virus, we didn't know exactly what we were dealing with. In fact, fear spread quicker than the virus itself, and politicians everywhere rushed to do something. It didn't really matter if the something was effective, tested, or based in scientific fact. But with the daily death counters on CNN and the doomsdayers becoming famous for more and more cataclysmic predictions, the public turned to the best and brightest among us to save the universe, politicians. There's a problem, though, isn't it? The reality is we are not the best and brightest among us, some of us excluded. But perhaps more importantly, there's a reality that there's very little that humans can do to actually stop the spread of a respiratory virus. Even the most powerful man in the world foolishly promised to, quote, shut down the virus, only to see cases soar to a record high. Well, here we are, almost 2 years removed from the introduction of COVID-19 into the world, and it's time to reflect on how we, the politicians, performed in our service to the public. This is going to take a little bit of time to unpack, so I'll be in the well about once a week featuring what we once mocked as conspiracy theories that we are now finding out was really just a spoiler alert. We will talk about things like the CDC's latest finding on the power of natural immunity, the lack of evidence for the efficacy of cloth face masks, and the damaging impact of school shutdowns, and much more. For this week, though, I'd like to focus on lockdowns, which will, in my opinion, be viewed as the greatest public policy failure of the entire pandemic. An alternative title to this installment might be, When Does Governor Kemp Get His Apology? If you will recall, the initial goal of the lockdown policy was to slow the admittance rate into our strained hospitals during the initial COVID wave. Then we moved the goalposts. Slowing the spread then turned to some irrational belief that we could live in a COVID-free world, that if we shut down society for long enough, the COVID would somehow disappear. This is a monumental public policy mistake that came at great cost, but it's even more shocking when you consider that we abandoned everything we knew about virology when taking the unprecedented steps. In March of 2019, the WHO stated that at-home quarantine for the flu was, quote, not recommended because there is no obvious rationale for this measure. That same year, a report from Johns Hopkins University's Center for Health Security stated that, quote, in the context of a high-impact respiratory pathogen, quarantine may be the least likely NPI to be effective in controlling the spread due to high transmissibility. So fast forward to April of 2020, as Governor Kemp decides to reopen Georgia. The doomsdayers had a field day. The Atlantic stated that we were conducting an experiment in human sacrifice, and the governor became the subject of nightly jokes on the late-night shows. The Washington Post claimed that Georgia, quote, led the race to become America's #1 death destination. Criticism came from politicians from all over the country, ironically only aimed at Georgia, yet ignoring Colorado, who was also reopening at the time. It was almost as if people were cheering for us to fail. It was almost as if politicians were playing politics with a virus. Many in this chamber piled on. Even President Trump shunned the Georgia reopening. But a funny thing happened on our path to human sacrifice. It didn't happen. Our numbers continued to drop until, as virology would have predicted, a new variant of the virus emerged. However, we moved on without a single politician or late-night comedian that I know of offering Georgia or Governor Kemp the apology that they deserved. Lockdowns had a disastrous effect on business, mental health, primary medical care, education, and much more. We must look back honestly and study our response to this pandemic and own our mistakes. And it is becoming more and more clear that lockdown policy was a tragic mistake. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield it well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 33rd for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President, my fellow senators, colleagues, friends, and y'all. Today I just want to give you a little Black history moment, and I'm going to be talking about Bessie Coleman. While Amelia Earhart is often celebrated for her piloting heroics, it is pioneer Bessie Coleman who broke down barriers for women in aviation. Coleman took flight in 1921, almost more than 100 years ago, becoming the first African-American woman to earn a pilot's license. She was inspired to take to the skies at age 27 after her brother, a World War I veteran, told her that women in France are far superior than women in the United States because they can fly an airplane. Despite her drive, Coleman was denied flying privileges in the United States because she was Black and a woman. But however, Bessie was determined to become a pilot. Coleman began learning French before leaving for Paris to pursue her dream. After successfully earning her pilot's license, Coleman returned home to the United States, and on September 3rd, 1922, she made the first public flight by a Black woman in the United States in a plane she borrowed. I'd like to thank you for this opportunity, and this has been your Black History Moment. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the Rules Chairman, the senator from the 53rd, for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. I start by just saying, well, here we go again. Now, I am the only Republican that's serving in this body that was in the minority during the redistricting of 2001. Now, the senator from the 9th, yeah, she made a lot of statements about things going on here. But let me tell you, it is nothing like it was when I was here in 2001. I mean, talk about being sanctimonious and how you're above all this and you would never deny that. Well, it was in a brutal way in 2001. I know that's old history, and we talked about it during redistricting special session, but I'm tired of hearing it now. I mean, my goodness, it is nothing like it was in 2001. The Democrats were terrible, and those that were here will secretly tell you that. It was not gentleman or ladylike. It was cutthroat, to be clear. In fact, I would suggest to you that the chairman in charge of the committee, and I'm not going to mention Tim Golden's name, who's a good friend of mine and ours, he talked about his situation with some of the leadership and how it nearly came to sparring activity. So don't give me that crap about how terrible we are to Democrats. I would suggest that we are more cooperative and honorable and kind to the Democrat members in this body, and we should be, than they were ever kind to the Republicans. How many committee chairs are they? I mean, the Democrats had one in 2001, and that was Charlie Tankersley in Special Judiciary, which I was a member of that committee. I think we got to speed humps and parking legislation that year, but nothing important. So come on, I've been here. I've seen it. It is so much better how things happen today. Now, I'm not saying they're perfect. I'm not saying they're good, but they are so much better than they were in 2001, so I don't want to hear that no more. And I'm sure we will. You know, vote against it, vote for it, whatever. But that's what we do here. And ladies and gentlemen, before I get any angrier and say things that I regret saying later, I'm going to do like my mama said, which I didn't think about it till now. I'm not going to say anything else. Have a good day. I yield the will.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 52nd for a point of personal privilege. Senator from the 52nd.
Sorry, Mr. President, I was deep in thought back there. But anyway, I just wanted to mention, you may have seen some, but the anesthesiology assistants in Georgia are here today. Those are the PAs specializing in anesthesia, which is what I am, from Emory University and from South University, the two universities in Georgia that train those in that way. I was an Emory graduate myself some years ago. And they're part of the anesthesia care team in Georgia. They do a great job, and just wanted to make sure you knew they were here, and I appreciate them coming to the Capitol and being with us. Thank you.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 43rd to, I think, introduce the doctor of the day.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, I am here to introduce the doctor of the day, Dr. Carmen Eccles. She is a board-certified family medicine physician whose passion is educating patients and their families on preventive medicine and chronic disease management, such as hypertension, type 2 diabetes, and high cholesterol as a means toward generational health. Born in Foxworth, Mississippi, and raised in Oakland, California, she received her bachelor's degree in biology from Xavier University of Louisiana, HBCU. She earned her medical degree from Wayne State University and completed her residency and internship in family medicine at Georgia Health Services University in Augusta, Georgia. Dr. Eccles Additional special medical interests include adolescent medicine, women's health, and integrative medicine. She is also a member of the American Academy of Family Medicine and the Georgia Academy of Family Physicians. Dr. Eccles is a proud wife, mother, and dog owner who enjoys volunteering in her community, West African dance, trail walking, attending cultural events and festivals, and gourmet cooking. I introduce to you the Doctor of the Day, Dr. Carmen Eccles. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the will.
All right, we've got a resolution calling for a joint session of the General Assembly tomorrow for the purpose of hearing an address from the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption?
House Resolution number 705 by Representative Burns of the 159th and others. A resolution calling a joint session of the House of Representatives and the Senate for the purpose of hearing a message from the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, inviting each other Justice of the Supreme Court and each Judge of the Court of Appeals to be present at the joint session and for other purposes. Be it resolved by the General Assembly of Georgia that the Honorable Chief Justice of the Supreme Court is hereby invited to address a joint session of the House of Representatives and the Senate at 11 a.m. Tuesday, February 8th, 2022, in the hall of the House of Representatives, and for other purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
The chair recognizes the majority leader to speak to the resolution. Tell us all about the state of the judiciary.
Thank you, Mr. President. The state of the judiciary is tomorrow. I suggest we all go. I yield the will.
Does any other senator wish to give us additional pearls of wisdom, excitement? Would the senator from the 19th like to speak about the judiciary? Oh, he waves. He waves. Is there objection to adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. That was the most exciting thing we've done all day. So as a reminder, the Senate will proceed to the House chamber at 10:45. We'll exit through the rear door and head our way over to the joint session. So as a reminder, the same as the State of the State address, we'll live stream it here for those members that want to stay in the chamber and watch it. Otherwise, there'll be we can all proceed over to the House. Masks are required in the House chambers. So if you're going to populate the House chamber, make sure that you've got a mask with you. You have a consent calendar of privileged resolutions. Does any senator wish to remove a resolution from the consent calendar? The chair hears none. Is there objection or adoption of the resolutions on the consent calendar? The chair hears none. The resolutions on the consent calendar are adopted. Are there any motions to withdraw and commit? Chair sees none. You have a consent calendar of local bills before you. Mr. Secretary, are there any objections filed to any bills on the local consent calendar?
Mr. President, there are no objections filed.
For what purpose does the senator from the 33rd rise?
Mr. President, I'd like to excuse the senator from the 35th for business outside the Capitol.
Without objection, the senator from the 35th is excused. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the Committee on State and Local Government, which is favorable to the passage of the bills on the local consent calendar? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. The questions on the passage of the bills on the local calendar. All those in favor vote yea. Opposed, nay. The Secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bills on the local consent calendar, the yeas are 50, the nays are 1, and the bills having received the requisite constitutional majority are therefore passed. Chair recognizes the majority leader for a motion.
Mr. President, I ask for unanimous consent that the bills that were passed on the local consent calendar be immediately transmitted to the House.
The majority leader has asked for unanimous consent to immediately transmit the bills that were just passed on the local consent calendar to the House. Is there objection? The chair hears none, and they are immediately transmitted. We are now moving on to the rules calendar. Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption of Senate Bill 257?
Senate Bill number 257 by Senator Anderson of the 43rd and others. A bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 2 of Chapter 3 of Title 35 of the OCGA relating to Georgia Crime Information Center so as to provide for criminal history record restrictions for certain persons cited with or convicted of certain criminal offenses and for other purposes. The Senate Committee on Judiciary recommends that this bill do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Strickland of the 17th District Chairman. The Senate Judiciary offers the following substitute to Senate Bill 257, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 2 of Chapter 3 of Title 35 of the OCGA relating to Georgia Crime Information Center so as to provide for criminal history record information restrictions for certain persons cited with or convicted of certain criminal offenses, to provide that restricted criminal history record information shall be available to criminal justice agencies and for other purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 43rd to speak to Senate Bill 257.
Thank you, Mr. President. In 2020, I authored and the General Assembly unanimously passed Senate Bill 288, Georgia's inaugural law allowing the restriction and sealing of certain misdemeanors and pardon convictions. Senate Bill 288 was the product of a true bipartisan support effort supported by a coalition led by the Georgia Justice Project and the Metro Atlanta Chamber that included 67 stakeholder groups from a variety of political backgrounds. Since taking effect last year, citizens across Georgia have begun navigating the process to have their eligible records restricted, and I have been heartened to hear their stories. But as with any new law, once it goes into effect, you find small changes that strengthen it and make it more effective. Senate Bill 257 provides a few minor cleanup provisions, clarifications, and minor expansions on the work that we did in 2020. I'm confident that these changes will further the intent of Senate Bill 288 and help deserving Georgians back to work. So those small changes, first, it brings consistency to restriction and sealing of non-violent theft offenses. Currently, some but not all of misdemeanor theft offenses are eligible for restriction and sealing. Senate Bill 257 brings consistency. Second, it makes restriction of eligible offenses automatic for people who have been pardoned. They have been pardoned by the Board of Pardon and Paroles as long as the offense is not a serious, violent felony or sexual offense. Third, it enables courts to seal minor offenses. Certain minor offenses do not appear in the GCIC database. These offenses are already eligible for sealing under Senate Bill 288, but current law requires that a record restricted by GCIC before a court can seal the record. This creates a problem for eligible minor offenses that don't appear in GCIC in the first place. So Senate Bill 257 addresses that problem. It also provides a fix for human trafficking survivors. Currently, there is a 2-year wait before asking a court to restrict and seal their offense. Senate Bill 257 fixes that problem so that there's no waiting period to apply for trafficking survivors. It also allows people to file retroactive first offenders petitions without first getting a prosecutor's permission to file. Prosecutors can still oppose the relief, and a judge still uses their discretion whether to grant relief. Last, while criminal justice agencies have always had access to restrict and sealed records for law enforcement or criminal investigation purposes, Senate Bill 257 states that explicitly. It clarifies that retroactive first offender is not available for convictions that were used in the subsequent prosecutors for possession of a firearm by someone with a felony record or subsequent prosecution under a recidivist statute. This was requested by the Prosecuting Attorney's Council. Line 21 through 24 allows for expungement of any misdemeanor theft charge, not just shoplifting and refund fraud. Line 32 through 33 provides for automatic restriction of pardoned convictions. Note that pardoned serious violent felonies and sex offenses are still not eligible for restriction. Line 43 clarifies that trafficking survivors can immediately request expungement after their conviction is vacated due to the conviction being a direct result of their status as a victim of trafficking. Line 44 through 46 enables court clerks to seal minor non-fingerprintable offenses. This does not expand the list of offenses that are eligible for expungement. It just enables court clerks to seal offenses that Senate Bill 288 made eligible for that relief. Lines 59 through 62, this is the second part of automatic restriction for pardoned convictions. Lines 32 through 33 deal with automatic restriction of GCIC records, but lines 59 through 62 deal with courts sealing their records. Lines 75 through 76 amends the code to explicitly state that criminal agencies have access to restricted and sealed records for law enforcement or criminal investigation purposes. Line 85 removes the requirement that petitioners obtain prosecutorial consent before filing for retroactive first offender. Lines 93 through 96 clarifies the retroactive first offender for convictions that were used in subsequent prosecutions for possession of a firearm by someone with a felony or record subsequent prosecution under a recidivist statute. That is the summary of Senate Bill 257, and I will yield if there are any questions.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 29th with a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Does the senator yield?
I will.
Senator, if you will look at lines 93 through 96, did you say that under this legislation it would provide protection for the individuals with the previously convicted on possession of firearms?
No, what I said is that this clarifies that the Retroactive First Offenders Act for convictions that were used in subsequent prosecutions for possession of a firearm, that it would be a firearm by someone with a felony record or subsequent prosecution under recidivist statute.
Does the senator continue to yield?
Sure.
Could you tell me how this would be applicable, if I'm understanding you, how this would be applicable to someone who a retroactive first offender with a case that involved possession of a firearm?
So, yes, so someone that applies for the first offender to have their record use the first offender retroactive status can apply. Now, it's still up to the judge and the prosecutor whether they allow for that person to even apply.
Does the senator continue
Sure.
to yield? But you're saying that person the person that's applying has been charged with possession of a firearm during the commission of a crime?
So what I'm saying is that if they have that on their record, that they can apply, but it should have, it has to be a violent felony. If they have possession of it, that is different than someone actually committing a crime.
Yes, ma'am. And the difference between that, if the senator continues
Sure,
to yield,
sure.
is what you're saying. The difference is someone arrested for burglary is in possession of a firearm while they're committing the burglary, but they are not arrested for aggravated assault or any of that other stuff. It would be applicable to the burglary charge where they were charged with burglary and possession of a firearm during the commission of a crime.
If it is a violent felony, it is not applicable.
Right, and a burglary is not identified as a violent felony. Is that not true?
That's true.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Senator for yield?
Sure.
Senator, could you give me the definition, the legal definition, please, as you understood it, putting this bill together, on what a human trafficking survivor is?
So a human trafficking survivor is someone who has been trafficked and lived to tell about it. And they are no longer in that lifestyle. But currently they have to wait 2 years before they can even get their record cleared. And what this does is allow them to apply immediately.
Yes, ma'am. The senator for the yield?
Sure.
Would one of these survivors, I understand that there are industries around the state that are run by individuals who take advantage of women and children and market them through massage parlors and walking the streets and things of that nature. And those are clearly sex traffic survivors. Would this legislation also be applicable to an individual who, upon their own, went out and sold sex?
The way I understand this bill, yes, they can apply. Now, it is still up to the judge, and it's still up to the prosecutor whether they are eligible or not.
Okay, and would the senator yield for one last question?
Sure.
Yes, ma'am. You said there would be, you said there would be an automatic expungement of any charge involving theft, including shoplifting?
There is no automatic expungement for any of these offenses because Georgia is not on a unified system. But once they apply, it is not automatic. It just still has to go through a judge for it to be determined if they are allowed to have it restricted or sealed. So none of these are automatic.
Thank you, Senator.
Sure.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 22nd for a question.
I will continue to yield. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm looking at those paragraphs. So if you look at page 4, and we're looking at 88 through 96. Is it not true where it says the court may issue an order retroactively granting first offender? If you go down there, it also does say, provided, however, that no relief will be pursuant to this subsection may be given to a conviction that was used as the underlying conviction violating section 1611-131. Is it not true that that's the section that deals with your firearms? And
Yes.
would that not be accurate that no relief would be given if the underlying conviction was for that firearm 1611-131?
That is true, Senator.
They would not receive that relief. Is that
They
not
would
correct?
not. That is true, Senator.
Thank you, Senator.
You have no more questions.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask for your favorable consideration, and I yield the will.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against Senate Bill 257? The chair sees none. The question is on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to adoption of the committee sub? Chair hears none. The committee sub is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. The questions on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 48, the nays are 3. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed by substitute. Ms. Secretary, can you please read the caption of Senate Bill 326?
Senate Bill number 326 by Senators Anna Vitarte of the 31st and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 3 of Title 50 of the OCGA relating to state, flag, seal, and other symbols so as to provide for placement of a monument in honor of the Honorable Clarence Thomas within the Capitol building or grounds and for other purposes. The Senate Committee on Government Oversight recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Harbin of the 16th District Chairman.
Amendment number 1. Just read the whole thing.
Amendment number 1. Senator Ork of the 36th District and others offers the following amendment. Amend Senate Bill 326 by inserting Ann Virginia Thomas after Thomas on line 3, by inserting Ann Virginia Jenny Lamp Thomas, his wife and helpmate, and essential partner in the success of Justice Thomas after Thomas on line 12. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 1st to speak to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise today to bring up something that's close and personal at home for me. I'm speaking of Senate Bill 326. As a senator from the 1st District, which includes Savannah and the surrounding areas, which specifically I live about 2 miles from Pinpoint, I'm proud to present this Senate bill. Legislation allowing a statue honoring United States Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas to be placed on the state capitol grounds. You know, I've known Justice Thomas's mother for about 30 years. And about 25 years ago, she was very instrumental, helpful, and very kind to my wife when she had surgery at Candler Hospital, where Clarence Thomas's mother works. Justice Thomas was born in Pinpoint, Georgia. His father left the family when he was 2, and a house fire later left Thomas, his mother, and siblings homeless. Clarence Thomas lived with his maternal grandparents in Savannah. His grandfather taught him the value of hard work and getting a good education. Despite the challenges, circumstances he was born into, Clarence Thomas went on to achieve greatness. He was the first of his family to attend college, and after a brief study in the seminary, he graduated cum laude from Holy Cross in 1971. He received his Juris Doctor, his J.D., from Yale Law School in 1974. In 1981, Clarence Thomas joined President Ronald Reagan's administration as Assistant Secretary for Civil Rights in the Department of Education, and before chairing the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. In 1989, Thomas was nominated by President George Bush for a seat on the United States Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia. With the retirement of Supreme Court Justice Thurgood Marshall, the first African American on the court, Thomas was nominated as his replacement. After a confirmation hearing before the Senate Judiciary Committee, marred by some of the worst type of political gamesmanship, Judge Thomas persevered and was confirmed by bipartisan vote of the Democrat-controlled Senate. Justice Thomas has now served with distinction on the highest court in the land for over 30 years. Clarence Thomas has lived a life marked by tremendous achievement worth commemorating. This native son of Georgia deserves a place of honor and recognition on our Capitol grounds, a place where future generations of Georgians can learn valuable lessons from his legacy and gain inspiration on the belief that their lofty dreams are attainable too in America, regardless of the circumstances into which they are born. Senate Bill 326 is straightforward. It calls for a monument honoring Justice Thomas to be designed, procured, and placed by the Capital Arts Standards Commission, subject to approval by a monument committee composed of the members of this General Assembly. Funding will come from private sources with no public funds to be expended. With that, I ask for your favorable consideration. Mr. President, I'll be happy to yield to questions if there are any.
Chair recognizes the Dean of the Senate to your right with a question.
Thank you. Senator Yield.
Certainly.
Senator, normally, I think in these circumstances, do we not have a clause on understanding that these statues are erected after someone has deceased? And if that's the case, would you be opposed to adopting an amendment on line 12 stating that simply upon his retirement, those 3 words?
You know, it is our prerogative to do that at times. We have done that, and we have done that in the past also. You know, I would not be receptive to that on this occasion because of the great stature that we're dealing with. Stature as in not a statue, but stature of the person.
All right, Senator, thank you.
Thank you.
Do you continue to yield?
Yes.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 42nd with a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the gentleman yield?
Yes.
I just wanted to follow up a little bit more on the question from the senator from the 15th. The monuments or statues currently on Capitol grounds, can you tell us how many are were placed for individuals before they retired from the office for which they were honored?
You know, he has served with great distinction, and I have not kept up with how many we have on the Capitol grounds. I know the others have been removed and placed with and without our permission. I believe this one stands on its own.
Will you continue to yield for another
Yes.
question? Can you tell us how many were placed and approved during the lifetime of the individual honored?
Would you repeat the question?
Can you tell us how many of our statues or monuments on Capitol grounds were placed there before the death or during the lifetime of the individual honored?
Again, I have not kept up with the history relating to specifics relating to whether they were still living or not. But in my humble opinion, I think that this statue, because of who we're dealing with, stands on its own.
So your opinion is that regardless of what our tradition or history or precedent has been regarding monuments and statues to public officials on grounds, this one is so critical that we don't need to consider that?
Well, no. Listen, I respect your opinion, and you're certainly, entitled to that. And but I don't. Your opinion critical versus I think that the stature of this particular situation deserves that. And
thank you.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 53rd to your left with a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Yield.
Yes.
Isn't it true that we have President Carter's statue on the grounds and he is still alive?
The senator knows of what he speaks, and thank you for that question.
And also, isn't it true that with his amazing career, President Carter, and the fact that we had his grandson serve with us, who is an honorable man as well, don't always agree what he talks about, but isn't it true that it would be most appropriate for us to put a United States Supreme Court member on the grounds of our Capitol?
Yes, sir. I thank you for that question. Thank you for the clarification. I appreciate that the former President of the United States, James Earl Carter, who is still alive and well, thank God, and we certainly have welcomed his statue on these grounds. And yes, I do believe his stature deserves the statue that you've discussed, and I certainly believe the same for Judge Clarence Thomas. Thank you so much.
Do you continue to yield?
I'm happy to.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 31st with a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator, you yield?
Yes, I do.
Is it not true that the Capital Art Standards Commission sets the policy, the placement, and separately will determine kind of what happens with the statue once a piece of legislation is passed the legislature and signed by the governor?
You know, thank you for the question. That's another point of clarification, and certainly they will have the ability and the instructions and the rules and regulations that go along with their committee, and then will be overseen by the General Assembly. Thank you.
Do you continue to yield?
Yes.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 10th with a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would the senator yield?
Yes.
Senator, I heard you refer to Justice Thomas's service as that he had served with great distinction. Is that correct?
That is my opinion, yes, sir.
Is that an opinion that all the colleagues in this chamber share?
You know, it's each and every one to decide, absolutely. I certainly respect your opinion, as I hoped you would respect mine. You know, I didn't agree with everything that President Carter did. You know, he is a great Georgian and a president that we should be proud of. I would hope that you would feel the same way about Justice Thomas. He is a wonderful person. His family is very close, and I think deserve the respect of this chamber.
Senator, further yield?
Yes.
Senator, are you aware of some of the controversy that surrounded him and his wife concerning the January 6th insurrection?
No.
Senator, further yield?
Yes.
So you've not heard that his wife may have been involved in the planning or participating in some of these earlier events regarding this event?
You know, that's total news to me. No, you're correct. I'm not aware.
Senator, further yield?
Yes.
Would you be surprised to learn that if that was true, that she was actually involved in planning that event, that could shed some negative light on this particular resolution?
You know, Senator from the 10th, I don't always agree with what my wife does too. I know there's senators in this audience that have wives that are in different parties and have different beliefs. I'm here for Clarence Thomas as the Supreme Court Justice of the United States. If you would like to try his wife, I don't think this is the appropriate venue or the appropriate time.
Senator, further yield?
Yes.
Senator, if you just hold, I'm going to be very cautious as to how you proceed with these questions. They're either going to be questions or statements. If you'd like to make a statement, you can take to the well. I'm not necessarily understanding there's a question in this line of communication. So the chair is paying very close attention.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I appreciate that. Senator, do you agree, would you support Amendment 1?
You know, that just arrived on my desk. You know, a little bit of surprise. I haven't heard anything about it. You would certainly hope to discuss that with the author, but I don't think that's what's happened in other statutes in our on our grounds, whether that's with Jimmy Carter or with Martin Luther King. So I just don't. That is something that I'd be happy to discuss offline, but I would not be receptive to that at present.
Thank you, Senator.
Yes, sir.
Do you continue to yield?
Yes, I'm happy to yield.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 32nd.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator, would you yield?
Yes.
Senator, isn't it true that the story told by Justice Thomas in the documentary Created Equal, in his own words, is a great example for all Georgians about how people can rise from poverty regardless of their color or their background to the highest levels of American society?
It is. It is something done in his own words. I would certainly encourage everyone to review that or go through that. And it is, as I said earlier, a statement to what he has risen from to where he's achieved now and served with distinction. Yes, thank you.
You have no more questions.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would ask for your favorable consideration and on this most worthy project, and I'll yield the well. Thank you.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 36th to present Amendment 1.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, colleagues. I rise to present the floor amendment 1 to Senate Bill 326. This amendment is quite simple. It simply would call for the statute including Virginia Lamp Thomas, his wife and helpmate, an essential partner in the success of Justice Thomas. We've heard remarks today on the floor about her role. I would point out to you that there's plenty of, there's actually precedent for this. The governor of Georgia, Joe Brown, during the Civil War, has had there was a statue placed by the legislature honoring his service, and it included his helpmate, his wife. It's right across the street, across from Old City Hall, if you want to check the history books on that or just walk out there and look at it. So there is precedent for that. Unlike the absence of precedents that the main bill presents, which is to put up a statue for somebody who's still in active service. And the whole reason and the wisdom against doing that is that what else is going to come up in the lifetime of an individual? You put a statue up to them, you want to be pulling it down later? If things go badly, if the person goes astray, and that's why there are only 2 statues on the grounds of the Capitol that were placed during the lifetime of those people. One is President Jimmy Carter, 10 years after he completed his public service. And the other is Herman Talmadge, years after he completed his public service. That's all. There's no precedent for what this bill is attempting to do, to take a person who is in public service now, has not concluded their career, and putting up a statue honoring them. There may be years ahead for Justice Thomas. None of us know what the future holds, and that's why the wisdom of not elevating and naming things and setting up statues prior to a person's conclusion of their public service. And it's, again, I don't know if we're trying to have a precedent-breaking session, but this would certainly break all precedents that I can think of. So I submit to you, if you want to put up that statue, include his wife along with it, as she plays such a full role and as is witnessed all across social media today, her very own emails and her own words of the things that she's been doing to augment her husband's service on the Supreme Court. So that is the amendment. I present it to you and ask for your wisdom and to cast a judicious vote on the amendment and on the full bill. Thank you. I yield the well.
Senator has yielded the well. The chair recognizes the senator from the 2nd to speak to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the Senate, these are hallowed grounds here around the Capitol. We honor great leaders who served Georgia and who served mankind, mostly after their death. Normally, these statues that were erected after someone has deceased, after we have written their story and passed their story down, after we have went back and went through their history and talked about what great Georgians they were, what contributions they have made to mankind. We talked about their political service after their service had finished. Justice Thomas' political story is still not yet finished. He's still serving this country. But let's just wait till after his story is finished, after his political service is finished. And then we go back and we talk about what kind of man he was to Georgia, what he meant to this country, and what he meant to this people. I say to you that this is not the time for Senate Bill 326. His story is not yet finished. Yes, we have two people on these hallowed grounds that statue was erected while they were still alive, one of which is President Carter. And although President Carter served in the Senate and he served as our governor, he served as our president of these United States, it was 10 years after he left public service that we went back and visited his history, talked about what he stood for, talked about what he did for this state, what he did for this country, what he meant to the people of Georgia, what he meant for America. Herman Talbridge, another Georgian, it was after his service to this state that we went back and looked at his story and thought it was fitting to erect a statue. If you're from the coast, you know of Justice Thomas. You know of his struggles. Young man from Penn Point, Georgia, how he came from little of nothing and rose to a Supreme Court justice. If you're from the east side of Savannah, like I was, he was educated in a school just a block from my home. In Savannah, everyone knows the name. St. Pius relished as one of the most accomplished men from St. Pius School, one of the most accomplished men from Savannah, Georgia. But yet, my friends, his story is still untold. His story is still not yet finished. When we honor people around these grounds, let's honor not only Georgia, but let's honor their past and their full story. I believe that after his political career is finished, we can always go back and look at the story of this man and talk about what he meant to Georgia. And then after we find out that if it's fitting, after his political is over, after his political career is over, then we'll look at whether or not he should be on this hallowed grounds to stand with these other great Georgians. Mr. President, I yield the will.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 22nd to speak to the measure.
Mr. President, I rise in opposition to this bill, but I also want to kind of put some context to what my colleagues are speaking to when they say that it may be a little bit too early at this point in time. There are certain cases that are out there that may still come back, and I want to kind of go through different ones that may still actually come back that have already been ruled on. And it's very problematic to not only African-American residents of Georgia, but all, quite frankly, residents of Georgia. So I'd like to just go through a few of them, and I think these are what my colleagues are kind of touching on. One is the case of Flowers versus Mississippi, which dealt with Batson challenges. A Batson challenge is where basically you cannot say that a person can't sit on a jury because they're African American or even because they're white. You can't do that. Well, in this particular case, this defendant actually was tried 6 times. A couple of the times it was actually ended in a hung jury, but the other times it was basically found by Mississippi Supreme Court. Mississippi, mind you, actually found that the DA actually struck persons because of race. It went to the Supreme Court because finally on the last case, even the Mississippi court said we've had enough, and they basically upheld the conviction, but it went to the Supreme Court. At the Supreme Court, they said that still the Batson challenges have been used to actually discriminate on the basis of race, that the district attorney had discriminated and actually purposely not only struck African American jurors, but he also asked more inquisitive questions of African American jurors. Now, who was actually the person who wrote this opinion? Was it one of the more liberal justices? Absolutely not. It was actually Justice Kavanaugh that wrote the opinion and said there's no doubt the fact that 41 of 42 basic strikes were against African Americans. That's 41 of 42. And each one of those, he also found, where the African American persons were actually asked more inquisitive or more detailed or more poignant or stringent questions than the others. And they actually overruled that conviction. Justice Thomas, though, actually not only sided with the DA that used the discriminatory strikes, no doubt they were discriminatory strikes. Remember, it was 41 of 42. Many commentators say that he actually implied that Batson was no longer should be applicable as far as court is concerned, which is one of our bedrock rulings in the United States. Another case dealt with affirmative action, Fisher versus University of Texas. In that particular case, Texas was using race as one factor, not all the factors, but one factor to have diversity within their school. It was just one factor among many. It had been used many times and had been used since what they call the Bakke decision. And in that particular case, it went in front of Justice Thomas, and he actually was the leading opinion on that. And he said that race should never be used as a factor, unless it meant death, imminent death, or peril. Well, if you take that kind of narrow view, what that would mean is all of the progress that we have made, a lot of the progress we've made in this country has come about through affirmative action. That type of narrow view would have eliminated affirmative action. That type of narrow view would have ended the possibility for many of African Americans especially to gain entry into the middle class. The third case that comes to mind is one that I've actually kind of dealt with, and that's Conic versus Thompson. And in that particular case, it dealt with a district attorney and assistant district attorney did not turn over basically exculpatory evidence. It dealt with blood evidence. It was very important blood evidence because there was no other witnesses or anything else in the case. The district attorney did not turn that over. There was no doubt that the DA did not turn that over. And the fact of the matter is the person was convicted. Because of that conviction, there was another case that he could not take the stand on because he now was a convicted felon. And in that case, not only was he convicted, he received a sentence of death. But when it went to the court, it was determined through investigation that yes, the blood evidence was not turned over. It should have been turned over. And the DA himself went back to court and said, look, the first conviction needs to be overturned and his death sentence needs to be stayed. They retried him on that case and he was found not guilty because now he could testify. Justice Thomas, though, actually ruled in that particular case and saying that in that case, immunity should still continue to survive. What are we talking about here? When he got out of jail after facing 18 years in jail and the prospect of having death, he sued the district attorney under 42 U.S.C. 1983. And as a person who represents the sheriff's officer, I've dealt with those cases. And what Justice Thomas said was this one incident should not be enough to alleviate immunity. I actually believe in immunity, which puts me at odds with trial lawyers and many members of our caucus. But that particular one instance is so obvious that if you do not give over blood evidence when it's the only evidence in place, that failure to train is one that should have warranted immunity to be stricken and allowed that case to go forward. But Justice Thomas took more of a more narrow view on that issue. All of these issues that we're talking about, whether it's Batson, whether we're talking about the immunity issue, all of these things are going to come back up again in some form or fashion. That's why we've been saying, let's wait and see what the complete record says. If the complete record was here today, those 3 cases and others might preclude me from voting yes, but at least I would have a complete record. But there's no doubt that when you talk about a Batson challenge, when you talk about affirmative action, and you talk about immunity, those things will come to the court again. And let's see now what the total record shows. It's important. It matters. It matters not only just to African Americans, it matters to all Georgians. Batson applies to all Georgians. The fact of the matter is when you start talking about immunity, it applies to all Georgians. And even when you talk about diversity, it applies to all Georgians. Because to be the United States that we really want to be, we all have to be inclusive. So it matters to all of us. So I would say that is why we've been impressing upon everyone that right now is not the appropriate time to go forward. Let's get the complete record and then have an honest debate about it. And with that, Mr. President, I yield the well.
Senator has yielded the well. The chair recognizes the senator from the 9th to speak to the measure.
I rise today to speak against SB 326. And honestly, I can't believe we even have this bill. We have so many other pressing matters to address in this chamber. So many people out there hurting. There's greater need, and this is what we're prioritizing. So if we're gonna waste time in the chamber doing this, let's do it. And I'm here to talk in opposition. Justice Thomas is controversial. I appreciate what he's attained. My family rose from poverty. A lot of black families in here. Families rose from poverty, graduated from college. I think a nice Senate resolution would have sufficed than having us here debating this issue. And it's not that let me just say this. He's not well received by the black community. I'm not sure if some of you guys know that. I'm not saying I speak for every black American, but I come from those families. I listen to the conversations. I think I have a pretty intimate knowledge and a grip on how we, black people, as a collective feel about Justice Thomas. And it's not that we have a problem that he's a conservative or Republican. We think he's a hypocrite and a traitor. And I'm gonna tell you why. I'm gonna tell you why. He is supportive of affirmative action. I'm sorry, he's an opponent, He's an opponent, let me get my thing right. He's an opponent of affirmative action. He's made that very clear. And the thing is, as an opponent of affirmative action, he is also benefiting and is still reaping the benefits and enjoys the advantages of his current office because of affirmative action. He has said that it is a white program for white people, that it is an assaulting handout to black people because it promotes the white savior. And really, those of us in the African American community thinks that it provides an opportunity. That's what affirmative action was for, to provide an opportunity in an unequal playing field, an institutional unequal playing field. And it offers the visionary view of different students coming together to break down barriers, to have conversations with each other in a discourse of a academic setting. If we were supposed to live in this world of just one race and one person and everybody was supposed to go to this one school and your race goes to this school, I hold the belief that, God would have made us all one race. It is all the same. Why not? But he put us here because we are all different and we are supposed to learn from each other and coexist. I think affirmative action offered that, again, in a society that had barriers as to where black people could and could not get their education. And it was the vision that Dr. King had for us all. For us all to get along, for us all to coexist. Justice Thomas, I'm not sure believes that. Kind of know he doesn't. The second thing, Justice Thomas participated in the most unjustifiable and hurtful decision imposed on Black America in the half century by gutting the key provision of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. It removed the preclearance. The Voting Rights Act of 1965, black people bled, fought, and went through everything to get the Voting Rights Act passed. And here we have a black man that took out a key provision. The same provision is giving us gerrymandered maps now. Just allow those gerrymandered maps. And unchecked voter suppression policies of SB 202. This is what happens when we remove preclearance. And, you know, it seems like white America keeps wanting to promote Justice Thomas, but we see more evidence where time and time again he subverts the struggles of black Americans. And he does it to improve his own status. I mean, you guys are trying to give him a monument. And let me just point out that, because we have this amendment here, Justice Thomas, as we're talking about someone that is not a bridge builder and promotes goodwill for all of us, he was against interracial marriage until 1986 when he married his second wife. Against. Third thing, what has he actually done for Georgia? And Georgians, what great contribution has he made? How has he built communities and promoted goodwill? Or what has he done to build for the common good? The common good. What has he done? He rarely speaks from the bench, if at all. And you're really asking us to raise him to the status of a Dr. Martin Luther King, a visionary, a bridge builder. Our beloved John Lewis, President Carter. We have evidence where these type of leaders promote goodwill. They deserve monuments. And I find it hard to believe that we think that Justice Thomas deserves that same honor, that same level of respect of some of our more respected leaders. I think we can think of a little more. And lastly, he has some controversial sexual harassment charges against him. Yeah, I heard my colleagues say they were cleared. But Ms. Hill still maintains that those allegations were not fully investigated. Her witnesses were not fully considered. You know, we went through the quick 3-day testimony. Witnesses that could have corroborated her testimony weren't allowed to speak. And to this day, she still stands by her allegations. And we need to decide, do we believe women? We're in the Me Too moment here. Do we believe women? And I don't care if it happened 30 years ago or 30 seconds ago. A woman knows if she's been sexually harassed. And we're not talking about a respectful compliment. There were some pretty, I would think, credible allegations that weren't investigated. You know, I don't know why they weren't. And lastly, who was consulted in the black community about this monument or this request for monument? Were black leaders consulted? Did we get testimony from black leaders? Ones we respect here in Georgia. I know the Legislative Black Caucus was not consulted. I know we had one black witness in committee, and he was a black man from a conservative talk show host, radio station, who says he had at least 3 women that were in support of this bill, yet I still have not seen that testimony from those women. Or who are they? Who from the black community else came out besides that one at 8 o'clock in the morning? I'm asking you guys today, all of you, my members, and as our whip outlined some of the legal problems in a more technical explanation. And we've also asked to wait for the full body of Justice Thomas's work. He has not passed away. We don't know what else might come of his tenure. This is not the right time for this type of honor. And we should wait, and I'm asking y'all to vote no on this bill. I yield the well.
Senator has yielded the well. The chair recognizes the senator from the 17th to speak to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, when we have groups of kids that come up to the Capitol and visit with us, in particular, my district as being so close, I get a lot of the youth leadership groups that come up, a lot of school kids that come up. And a lot of times when I'm in a room speaking with them, I have one of my colleagues from a different party there with me. One of the things we always highlight, especially given today, given the tone of where things are in our country and now in our state as well, is that even though we disagree on stuff, even though we may vote differently on certain things, we're all on the same team. We're Georgians first. We're looking out for our communities first. And even after we have a debate on the floors we're having here today, we can still go out and have lunch together, still be friends afterwards. What we're trying to do is tell these kids that we're not like what you see on TV. It's not like what you see on all the 24-hour news cycles with Republicans, Democrats eating each other up, at each other's throats constantly. We're bigger than that. There's something bigger than our disagreements. It's because we're all people first. We all have a story of where we came from and who we are. I don't know about y'all, but if I believed the things I see on mailers about me every 2 years when I'm attacked, I wouldn't vote for myself, those things they say about us when we get attacked. That's politics, right? That's how the game is played. But we always say, at least I do, to people that come and visit us, we're bigger than that in Georgia. We're not like Washington. We're not just tearing each other up all the time. And I say all that to say, the story of Justice Thomas is a Georgia story, a story of who he is. Not one Supreme Court decision he wrote on in 30 years up there. Not allegations tossed at him at hearings over 30 years ago. Not something maybe his wife may have said a couple years ago to somebody. The story of Clarence Thomas is a story of somebody that rose from being from a city that was named and founded after freed slaves. Somebody that grew up without a father that left him at an early age. somebody that was homeless from an early age, was the first person in his family to go to college, and then went on to go to Yale Law School, someone that became the Assistant Secretary for Civil Rights, Department of Education under President Reagan, somebody that was chairing the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, all before he was even on the U.S. Supreme Court bench. That's the story of this guy. It's a Georgia story, and that story should be told now, not after he's gone. Because when those school kids are coming up to our state capitol, when they're out there passing all these statues walking over to visit with us, what if they saw this guy's statue? What if they saw this gentleman's face stand there? And they asked a question. How did he get here? How did he get to have a statue on the Capitol grounds in Georgia? And the story is told of somebody that came from nothing against all odds and rose to that level. That's the story we should be telling now. Again, in Georgia, we talk all the time about, at least in this body and our friends across the way over here, about not being DC, not going down the level of name calling, not getting to where we can't even sit in the same room and have honest conversations. That's the tone of where we are now. Let's not use this as an opportunity to further that here with this debate. Let's talk about the story of a gentleman that we may not disagree with everything he ever did, every decision he ever wrote, everything he ever said, everything his spouse ever said. But let's agree on one thing. This is a Georgia story that for generations should be told in our state. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes the senator from the 10th to speak to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of this body, and I certainly appreciate the comments from my colleagues from the 2nd, from the 9th, from the 22nd, of course from the 36th, and also my good friend from the 17th. As I've listened to these arguments, I'm realizing there's something in here that a lot of the members on the other side of the aisle just don't get. Now, let me tell you what I mean by that. This is not a Georgian story. This is a black American who lived in Georgia and grew up in Georgian story. And as such, those of us that are of color are very sensitive to that. We can't whitewash history. We can't change the melanin in our skin. When you see Justice Thomas, first you're going to see a black man. Regardless of what kind of rulings he may make in the position that he currently occupies, you're still going to look at him as being a person of color. And as such, we are all of us that are people of color are very sensitive to that. That's why I say to you, you just don't get it. I love hearing about his history and how he grew up. And you can go around in this chamber and talk to any number of us, and they're going to share something very similar to you. I was orphaned when I was 11 years old, grew up on the poorest side of Atlanta. Went to some of the best schools, Ivy League schools in the state, University of Penn, bachelor's degree in Columbia University, MBA. You can go around and find many of those stories, but we haven't forgotten where we came from. Those of us in color in here feel that way about Justice Thomas, not because of him as a person, but because of his rulings and what he's done in the position he currently occupies. Let me just kind of share some of those positions that he's taken that we find offensive. There's a case, and these are all precedent-setting cases, and he already has a reputation on the bench of having disrespected any precedent that those that preceded him put in place. One that comes to mind is a 64 case, the New York Times versus Sullivan. And that case provided broad protection, First Amendment protection for the press. He's come out against that. Why is that important to us? Because a lot of times the only entity that's out there fighting for us that we can see a lot of cases as members of the press. Shall I mention Roe v. Wade, another 1973 constitutional where the courts ruled that women had a constitutional right to abortion. He's even come out against that. But the one that pains me more than anything else is this case, Gideon versus Wainwright. It was a Sixth Amendment case where the government was required to provide lawyers to the poor. Justice Thomas came out against that and simply said the government only had a right for them to hire an attorney, not provide money to pay for them. If that precedent is ever overturned, imagine what the impact is going to be for those in our criminal justice system that look just like me. Imagine if Roe v. Wade is overturned, what that's going to happen to those black women and other women of different ethnicities that don't have the resources to go around the globe selecting who they want and where they want to go to have an abortion. What is it going to do if the press no longer want to report on some of these atrocities, most recently in Minneapolis, that was committed against people of color? We shot first, we asked questions later. We're not here talking about Justice Thomas as the man. We all have a great deal of respect, as my colleague from the second has already said, of his many accomplishments. We do. It's his policies, it's his rulings, it's his decisions that we find extremely offensive. And I would say to my colleague from the 17th that I wouldn't want my little grandsons or granddaughters to come up here and be told the Clarence Thomas story. Not because of his birthright, but because of the many opinions he's rendered, and I yield away.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 31st to speak to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I want to take a few minutes to talk about Justice Clarence Thomas. His distinguished career serving an institution that's over 230 years old. Justice Thomas has served all America and all of Georgia, no matter your race, your gender, your community, or your culture. This comes from a young man born in South Georgia in the 1940s. He was determined not to allow his environment, the challenges the world imposed on him, nor his financial circumstances to dictate his American dream. But let's talk about experiences. Let's talk about, and I'm going to speak to you as a son born in a Puerto Rican brown family, and the impact Clarence Thomas has had on our family and millions of Americans across Georgia and the United States. Clarence Thomas was born in poverty in Pinpoint, a community founded by freed slaves that spoke Gula as his first language. Clarence Thomas left the seminary college in the aftermath of the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. because he did not believe the church was doing enough to address racism, his own actions as a young man. Clarence Thomas helped found the Black Student Union at Holy Cross and organized student walkouts. Those are facts, ladies and gentlemen. Those aren't myths. That's real life. But we should not look any further of his character than hearing from those that actually may know him best, like Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor, who was appointed by President Barack Obama and the first woman of color and Latina on the court. At the American Bar Association's inaugural Equity Summit, the ABA Journal reported on Justice Sotomayor's comments regarding her friendship with Clarence Thomas. Quote, Sotomayor explained that people find it odd that she considers Justice Clarence Thomas a friend, even though their judicial philosophies were so different. But she said there are few men who have a kinder heart than him, end quote. Quote, when someone in her family died, he sent flowers. And when she has been sick, he checked in on her. I see him as the basic caring about people that I have, Justice Sotomayor said. We are both committed friends and committed family members. And so in seeing him in that good in him, there's no reason for me to take our personal disputes and translate it into our personal reactions, said Sotomayor. After hearing from my colleagues today, I hope this Senate chamber, this Georgia Senate, can follow the example of Justice Sotomayor and Justice Clarence Thomas. As one of 4 justices to ever come from the state of Georgia, his remarkable legacy on America and Georgia is deserving of a statue. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the will.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 1st to close debate.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, I'm here to close debate on this issue that is very close and personal for me. It was a bit of a surprise that the senator from the 10th slanders his wife, and yet the senator from the 36th adds her name to the statute and amendment. You know, senator from the 22nd and 10th disagree with opinions, and I certainly get that. Number 9 was senator from the 9th was a waste of time, and it was name calling. To me, this is another example of bad faith and more gamesmanship. Let me just say what Justice Thomas said in the PBS documentary, Created Equal, Clarence Thomas in his own words. Justice Thomas stated, I felt as though in my life I had been looking at the wrong people as the people who would be problematic toward me. We were told that, quote, oh, it's going to be the bigot in the pickup truck. It's going to be the Klansman. It's going to be the rural sheriff. But it turned out that through all of that, ultimately, the biggest impediment was the modern day liberal. They were the ones who would discount all those things because they have one issue or because they have the power to caricature you. Let me just say that Justice Thomas has not forgotten his home. He's not forgotten his state. He's not forgotten his family. And he's not forgotten his city or the town that he's grown up in. He's not forgotten his beloved library in Savannah. But he's not in your face about it. He's not disrespectful about it. Having said that, I would like for your favorable consideration. I'd like for you to vote down the amendment. And God willing, this bill passes. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the will.
All right, we're going to take up amendment number 1 first. The senator from the 36th has proposed amendment number 1. Is there objection to the adoption? For what reason does the senator from the 36th rise?
I'd like to ask for unanimous consent to withdraw Amendment 1 to SB 326.
The senator from the 36th has asked for unanimous consent for amendment number 1 to be withdrawn. Is there objection? The chair hears none, and amendment number 1 is withdrawn. Is there objection agreeing the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. The questions on the passage of the bill. All those in favor vote yea. Opposed nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 32, the nays are 21. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption of Senate Bill 338? 338.
Senate Bill number 338, a bill by Senators Burke of the 11th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 7 of Chapter 4 of Title 49 of the OCGA relating to medical assistance generally, so as to increase postpartum coverage under Medicaid from 6 months to 1 year following birth and for other purposes. The Senate Committee on Health and Human Services recommends that this bill do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Watson of the 1st District Chairman. The Senate Committee on Health and Human Services offers the following substitute to Senate Bill 338, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 7 of Chapter 4 of Title 49 of the OCGA relating to medical assistance generally, so as to increase postpartum coverage under Medicaid from 6 months to 1 year following the end of the pregnancy and for other purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 11th to speak to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. I present to you today Senate Bill 338, and I want to thank Governor Kemp for his work on this issue, and he has pre-funded this in his proposed 23 budget. This is the #1 recommendation of the Maternal Mortality Committee that's done great work over the last 8 years trying to bring down the number of maternal deaths in this state. So this bill simply funds the postpartum period to fully to 1 year after birth, which is a time when many of the maternal deaths occur. I appreciate your favorable consideration. If there are no questions, Mr. President, I'll yield the well.
You have no questions. Chair recognizes the senator from the 33rd to speak to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President, my fellow senators, colleagues, friends, and y'all. I just want to say I support this bill because before I came to the Senate, I worked just down the street at the City of Refuge and Gateway, working with women, helping them to make a paradigm shift in their life. And one of our biggest challenge was getting them adequate health care, especially after they delivered a newborn. This will help move us in the right direction. We'd like for it one day to go further and maybe include full Medicaid expansion, but I think this is a good bill, and I will vote for it. Thank you very much, Senator from the 11th, for bringing this to us for a vote. I yield the well.
Thank you, Senators. Any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? The chair sees. For what purpose does the senator from the 36th rise? Would you like to speak? Chair recognizes the senator from the 36th to speak to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I rise in support of this legislation as a longtime member of the Health and Human Services Committee here in the Senate and before that over in the House. We have a very significant advocacy community that delivers services for mothers and children and infants, and also advocates here at the Capitol. And I'd like to recognize their role. Healthy Mothers, Healthy Babies in particular, a long-standing, a decades-old organization that has worked for strong policy to support women and children. And they have been active and vocal all the while providing services to the very populations that they have advocated for here, and have done a wonderful job educating legislators, holding events, reaching out to us, letting us know statistics about our own districts, infant and maternal health, and lifting up the really dreadful statistics that Georgia has had in terms of the maternal mortality. We've ranked, I don't know, and I believe the bottom 5 states in the country. The author knows those statistics very well with the medical practice that he's dedicated his life to, and has been someone that has long wanted to see us positively impact those numbers and those statistics. And they're not numbers, they're lives. They're families that are left without their mother, children who will grow up to never know the. Thank you. So it's been very dire consequences that we have dragged our feet in addressing these statistics. There's been a task force from both chambers, along with health professionals and experts. They've worked 8 years. That's a long, gosh darn time to get us to this place in the light of these statistics that we just cannot be proud of. And all of those numbers represent women who lost their lives or greatly diminished their health and their capacity, and they didn't have access to health care coverage in the postpartum period. This is a great leap forward. We used to only give 60 days of coverage. Then some years and a whole lot of work by people who are sitting in this chamber and across the hall and in the advocacy community and health professionals, and we pushed and moved it to a half a year. Now you can vote proudly for this bill that extends Medicaid coverage in the postpartum period for 12 months. A lot of people that aren't that close to the health policy issues don't even realize that how many women die in that period following delivery, and their particular heart malfunctions that can occur and kill a woman just before you know it. We had a wonderful testimony in our committee the other day from a woman who actually has a mechanical heart assist to address the damage that nearly killed her when she had that condition, that heart condition that for some women follows in the wake of a delivery. So we can all, and our Democratic leader in the committee commented the day that we passed this, that what a positive thing it was to see us come together across party lines and do the right thing, take this step and invest our money and save lives and stand in the face of people who oftentimes are terribly impoverished, don't even have a ride to get to a doctor, much less the coverage for the doctor's services. This is a great step forward in addressing it, and I will follow the comments of the senator from the 33rd who say, what a wonderful day it will be when we truly expand Medicaid to cover those who are left uncovered, so that health conditions can be addressed and hospitals and providers can get their reimbursement for the services that they all too often deliver totally uncompensated. Thank you for your attention, and I, of course, urge unanimous support of this bill. Thank you to the author for his leadership over the years, as well as the leader in the committee across the hall who has worked so hard for many years, and the chair of our own health committee. Thank you.
The question is on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to adoption of the committee substitute? Chair hears none, and the committee substitute is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? The chair hears none. The main question is ordered. All those in favor vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 54, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed by substitute. Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption of Senate Bill 342?
Senate Bill 342, a bill by Senators Kirkpatrick of the 32nd and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 24 of Title 33 of the OCGA relating to insurance generally, so as to provide for annual reporting regarding mental health parity in healthcare plans, to provide definitions, to establish penalties, and for other purposes. The Senate Committee on Insurance and Labor recommends that this bill do pass by a substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Byrd, District Chairman. Committee on Insurance and Labor offers the following substitute to Senate Bill 342, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 24 of Title 33 of the OCGA relating to insurance generally, so as to provide for annual reporting regarding mental health parity and treatment limitations, including non-quantitative treatment limitations in certain healthcare plans offered in the individual, small group, and large group markets, and for other purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 32nd to speak to Senate Bill 342.
Thank you, Mr. President. Fellow Senators, mental health and substance use disorder are getting a lot of attention this year. Our state already had challenges in this area made worse by the pandemic. There's federal law that requires that mental health services are reimbursed in the same way as medical and surgical services. And this bill, Senate Bill 342, creates a reporting method for insurance companies in our state to submit information to our insurance commissioner's office. The bill does not create a coverage mandate, but allows consumers to have access to information that they need in making decisions about their health care. The commissioner will create a form for information required. The insurance company subject to jurisdiction of the commissioner's office will submit the information for their 5 largest plans by plan type to the commissioner, who will then create an annual summary report by carrier. This information will be posted on the Commissioner's website in a readable form that will allow consumers to compare the information between carriers. The insurers will post summary information about their coverage criteria on their websites. This bill gives our insurance commissioner the tools needed to be sure that insurers in our state are following federal requirements on mental health parity, and it also adds transparency for consumers. I work with various stakeholders on this issue and was able to get agreement that this bill provides a good framework for reporting mental health parity. I appreciate the cooperation of Commissioner John King's office as well as representative of the insurance industry. I'd be happy to answer any questions and would ask for your favorable consideration.
You have no questions.
Thank you. I yield the will.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? The chair sees none. The question is on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to adoption of the committee substitute? The chair hears none, and the committee substitute is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? The chair hears none and the main question is ordered. The questions on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor vote yea. Opposed nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 48, the nays are 3. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed by substitute. Ms. Secretary, can you please read the caption of Senate Bill 363?
Senate Bill 363 by Senators Tillery of the 19th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Part 2 of Article 15 of Chapter 1 of Title 10 of the OCGA relating to the Fair Business Practices Act of 1975, so as to provide for class action suits and for damages for violating the requirements of solicitations for corporate filings or employment or labor-related posters or notices and for other purposes. The Senate Committee on Agriculture and Consumer Affairs recommends that this bill do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Walker of the 20th District Chairman. Committee on Agriculture and Consumer Affairs offers the following substitute to Senate Bill 363, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Part 2 of Article 15 of Chapter 1 of Title 10 of the OCGA relating to Fair Business Practices Act of 1975, so as to provide for class action suits and for damages for violating the requirements of solicitations for corporate filings or for employment or labor-related posters or notices and for other purposes. That's complete the order, Mr. President.
The chair recognizes the senator from the 19th to present Senate Bill 363. And just a gentle reminder that you're the only thing between your colleagues and lunch.
Thank you, Mr. President. I urge your favorable consideration of the bill. Colleagues, thank you so much for allowing me to present Senate Bill 363 to you. You may, if any of you have LLCs or incorporations, you know this time of year you have to renew that LLC or that corporation. It's $50. You pay it to the Secretary of State. You can actually do 3 years at once and pay $150. But some companies in our state have created some would call it a racket, of sending out these notifications. These are just 5 that I saw at my office over the past month that say you have to pay more. And they're very misleading. They look like they're Georgia forms. They look like they came from the Secretary of State's office or the Department of Labor, and say you have to pay $150 or sometimes $85 or sometimes a higher amount. And what those companies do is they pocket the difference. I don't mind them trying to have a business doing that, but 2 years ago we passed a bill in this chamber that said if you're going to do that, you should have listed on the front in 16-point hellevatic font that this is a solicitation, that it's not from the state, that you're not required to pay it, that it's not an official document. I can show you 5 right here that did not do any of those things any single time when they had the opportunity to do it. So what we did is, through working with members in here and then some constituents back home, went back and redrafted that bill to say, hey, there should be some teeth in this. If you don't do that, because of the committee, it's a $200 penalty, and that those penalties can be aggregated to create what we would call a class. Again, this is a do-gooder bill. It's not anything that'll get you reelected back home, but it's something that we ought to do to help protect our citizens from unscrupulous practices of others. Mr. President, if there are no questions, I'll yield the will.
You did a great job and have no questions.
Thank you, Mr. President. I urge your favorable consideration to Senate Bill 363.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? The chair sees none. The questions on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to adoption of the committee sub? Chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? The chair hears none. The main question is ordered. The question is on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the self-proclaimed do-gooder bill, the yeas are 51, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed by substitute. The chair would like to recognize the majority leader for a motion.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate stand adjourned until 10 a.m. on Tuesday, 8 February 2022.
Mr. Secretary, do you have any announcements?
The Rules Committee will meet immediately upon adjournment today in 4:50. The Judiciary Committee will meet in 307 of the CLOB at 2 p.m. today. The Education and Youth Committee will meet in 307 of the CLOB at 3 p.m. today. All of the committee meetings have been canceled for today. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Does any senator wish to make an announcement? The chair sees none. The majority leader has moved that the Senate stand adjourned until Tuesday, February 8th, 2022 at 10 a.m. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes actually have it. And the Senate stands adjourned.